The question of Joseph Smith's experience with angelic messengers and visions of the latter days remains. If there was a set ritual pattern for the vision given to the prophets, where only Jesus Christ was the presenter and signifier, then how is it that Joseph received visions of the last day through angels, some without apparent symbolic content? For example, if Joseph Smith received the vision from Moroni in its entirety or in part, we should expect Joseph's account to contain references to the same symbols based upon the planetary archetypes found in the accounts of the earlier prophets. Yet, according to Joseph Smith's history, Moroni related the events to the young prophet in very concrete and literal terms. There were no tetramorphs, heavenly ladders, trees of life, or the like. Instead, Moroni spoke of and perhaps showed Joseph the very realistic calamities of the second coming: famine, war, and disease. In fact, there is no record of any angelic visit to Joseph that indicates that Joseph was given a symbolic vision of the future. The recorded visitations are primarily related to the bestowal of priesthood authority, or, as in Moroni's case, assisting in the coming forth of the Book of Mormon. During none of these visitations was the great prophetic vision given or recorded. Joseph received many visions, some of which are recorded in the Doctrine and Covenants. These would include the vision of the Kingdoms of Glory received in 1832 in the upper room of the John Johnson home in Hiram, Ohio, and recorded in Section 76. Another important vision recorded in the Doctrine and Covenants was that of Joseph's brother Alvin in the Celestial Kingdom, received in the Kirtland Temple and recorded in Section 137. Neither of these two visions can qualify as the prophetic vision seen by John the Evangelist or the other prophets. Of course, Joseph had numerous other visions of which we do not have detailed accounts. It is clear from the records that Joseph did not record the vision that John had, if indeed he had received it. Still, circumstantial evidence does strongly suggest that Joseph did have the vision and the approximate time period he must have received it. In 1832, while in Hiram, Ohio, Joseph Smith asked for an explanation of certain portions of John's revelation. He asked a series of questions and received answers from the Lord. For the most part, Joseph was asking for the interpretation of the symbolic elements of John's vision. This is curious, since if Joseph had received the prophetic vision, then he would not have had to ask the questions. After all, the vision was meant to be understood by the person receiving it. For example, Nephi asked questions as to the meaning of what he saw on several occasions, and was given an explanation. If Joseph had received the symbolic vision by angels before 1832, this series of questions and answers would have been unnecessary. Joseph would have known all the answers to the interpretation without asking. Neither Moroni or any other angel had given him the vision up to this date. In October 1841, Joseph Smith made the statement that the angel that appeared to John was either a resurrected or translated being. It appears that Joseph was not sure which was the case. If Jesus Christ had appeared to Joseph and shown him the vision as with the earlier prophets, then Joseph would not have been equivocal. He would have known and stated so. The angel was a resurrected being. Joseph's equivocation indicates that he had not received the prophetic vision to that point in his lifetime. In early 1843, however, we have a completely different Joseph Smith. In an April 1843 discourse during the annual conference of the church, Joseph gave a detailed explanation of the beasts of John's vision. Joseph showed a deep understanding of the symbolic visions of all the prophets and the underlying symbolic substructure of the prophetic vision. Clearly, Joseph understood the nature and meaning of John's visions and the visions of the other prophets as well. A comment made in the same discourse hints to the fact that he, along with the earlier prophets, had received the vision along with an interpretation. What else could explain Joseph's sudden increase in knowledge and understanding of the prophetic vision? In fact, it was during this discourse that Joseph proclaimed that the book of Revelation is one of the plainest books. Where once Joseph had to ask questions on each symbol, now Joseph fully understood the revelation and considered it one of the plainest books. Two days earlier, during the same general conference, Joseph gave a discourse on the second coming, which, of course, was the primary topic of John's revelation. During this discourse, Joseph made a remarkable statement about the sign of the Son of Man. That the sign of the Son of Man was a planetary comet is found nowhere in Scripture. Joseph is the only source for this identification. The only way he could have received this information is directly, and given the visual nature of the identification, only from a vision he had experienced himself. It is almost certain that Joseph received the grand prophetic vision sometime between October 1841 and April 1843. The history of the church and Joseph Smith's diary are silent on the matter. However, the most likely time frame for the vision is January 1843. It was during the first few days of 1843 that Joseph likely received the endowment by revelation. The history of the church records for the 6th of January 1843 Joseph's rejoicing at what had transpired in the first days of the new year. Joseph provides the reason for the rejoicing, receiving from God the ancient order of his kingdom, or, in modern terminology, the endowment. Joseph then continues his rejoicing and transitions from speaking of the endowment to describing the events of the second coming and of John's vision. Of course, this does not necessarily mean that Joseph received the prophetic vision at this time. Still, it would make sense that Joseph received the vision along with the content of the endowment. Both vision and ordinance are fundamentally related in content and symbolic presentation. Furthermore, Joseph explicitly linked the ancient order to the events described by John in his joyful celebration. If he had received both during those opening days of January 1843, there would have been plenty to celebrate.